Well, everybody, welcome back to the right studio this time. Good grief. It's Friday. I promise I've had no cocktails yet. I'm still on my chai tea. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. Really good to have you all here today. And back with me again in this awesome studio is Guy Anderson. Guy, so good to have you. You're in the right studio.
Thanks for having me back.
I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Anyway, we're here and I'm really happy to have you back. You've been with us before and we've had the most incredible conversations about the Cabbage Patch Kids and Tartaria. And today we're obviously going to be speaking about lots more of that, as well as Tesla, reverse engineering. I mean, wow. Amazing topics. And I have to say, I'm listening to one of your audiobooks right now, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. I am loving it. Wow. You are an absolute hive, and in a good way, of information. You're a real beehive, not a killer beehive. So really, it's so good to have you back. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. It really is amazing. How have you been?
Yeah, good, thank you. Busy, but yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, not enough hours in the day, really.
Absolutely right. And nowadays, it's not even, I'm awake until 2, 3 every morning, and then I'm up at 6 again. And it's like, that's my cycle. Like, I'm just working because obviously with a lot of Americans, and I speak to a lot of them obviously at nighttime, and then I'm like all wired, and then it's so bizarre that my whole body clock is actually changing.
Yeah,
as well.
I switch off at 10.
Wild.
10 o'clock for me. I switch off. I try and switch off at 9, but I'll go till 10 o'clock, and then that's it. Everything's turned off. Because it's those vital hours between 10 and 2 when your body repairs itself. So you've got to be asleep.
Right.
So I do try and do
so
that, but
true.
I wake up early. I do wake up incredibly early.
It's absolutely, yeah, it's wonderful. And that sunrise in the morning, which I still get. My cat won't let me sleep later than that. I get clawed awake. Anyway, lovely to see you again, and welcome everybody in the chat. Charmaine, Lisa D, Rita, the wenches with wrenches. We hopefully won't be needing much moderation today. Gosh, the trolls have been on high alert lately. Gosh, it's crazy to see what's happening out there right now. I think with all this truth coming out, Guy, obviously working with survivors and stuff as well, a lot of survivors speaking up, people like yourself disclosing the truth about our history, and it's just amazing. So I would love to. I'm going to put everything that I know and have heard about Tesla and Tesla technology and Tesla coils and I'm going to put it out of my head for now. And I'm going to ask you to give us your narrative of what you know about Tesla, the technology, the man, the lineage. Over to you, Guy.
Okay, right. That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Totally.
Well, first of all, we have to decide whether or not we believe the narrative, because we don't believe most, do we? These days, I think we've the people that are truly awake have learned to accept that most of what we're told is either distorted or fabricated. And Tesla, for me, may well be one of those people.
Right.
It's because I find his backstory very difficult to accept. And also from digging that I've done into people like Napoleon and obviously Nikola Tesla, when there's someone significant, someone that changes the course of history, it's very convenient if they don't have any descendants. So this is true of Albert Einstein, and so many other people. if there isn't a living descendant, then there's nobody to contact or interview that can share letters, documents, photographs, and some kind of journal or diary of events. So I sometimes wonder whether or not he actually did exist, because a little bit like Napoleon with his sort of almost fantastical backstory, Tesla goes from being, well, somebody who arrives in America penniless, who at stages resorts to having to dig ditches to make ends meet, who at one point while he's at college is considered to be dead. His friends think he drowned. He becomes addicted to gambling and abusing alcohol. And all of a sudden he changes the course of history. Now, for me, that's quite something to accept. That's quite a claim.
Wow.
So if you look at his backstory, he is the son of a priest, and his mother invents labor-saving devices for the kitchen. She receives information in visions. So she has blackouts. And during the blackout, information is downloaded. Now, Nikola, as he gets older, starts to experience the same thing. He has a near-death experience where he contracts cholera, and his father wants him desperately to follow in his footsteps and become a priest. But he says to him while he's critically ill that if he can pull through, then he will pay for him to go to engineering college, and he won't have to follow him and become a priest, which I find strange, you know, to make a deal with your son while he's literally on his deathbed, to say if you pull through, you can do whatever you want. I would have thought this man would have been praying to God for him to recover, not trying to get a young lad to do a deal. You know, on the basis that, you know, if you survive, you can go to college. I don't think that would be really, you know, the most important thing going through his mind at that moment. So there are obviously lots of patents out there that are credited to Nikola Tesla. And at the time, I don't know if it's still the case or not, but at the time, a patent had to actually work for it to be approved. To actually get a patent, it had to do what you proposed it did. And he maintained that he never had to experiment. He never had to write anything down. He didn't have to calculate anything, because the visions that he received were so clear that when he conducted what would be initially, I suppose, the first test or experiment, it worked perfectly, as he predicted it would. So he receives a vision, makes whatever it is, and it works first time. There are then claims that, I don't know if you've heard of a figure who allegedly spent time with the American government and worked within the White House and at the Pentagon, called Valiant Thor. He claimed that he was from Venus and that he had been they had been communicating with Tesla and other people because they wanted to share information, and they knew that if they gave it to the government would want to basically weaponize everything or profiteer from it. So we kind of got that going on. He receives this information through visions, just like his mother did, and his visions just happened to change the course of history. No living descendants. And when he dies, Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, gets a renowned lock picker to crack open Nikola Tesla's safe in his hotel room, retrieve all of the documents from it, which is interesting because apparently he never wrote anything down. And it took 2 trucks to transport the documents from his safe to a secure warehouse in New York. 2 truckloads to literally carry what was inside a safe. Well, how big was the safe? He only had a hotel
in the hotel room. I was going to say in the hotel room.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And bear in mind, he never wrote anything down. So what is it that they're recovering? Now, apparently, 3 of the files were
Sure.
never actually handed over. John G. Trump kept 3 files, 3 particular files, and they all related to time travel. He said they were of no significance, so he didn't bother handing them in. He was just going to look through them, evaluate them, but didn't think they were actually worth anyone looking into any further. And our files were handed over to Nikola Tesla's nephew, which is interesting because there's no record of that anywhere. We don't know who the nephew was, and who is this nephew? What was he doing in America? Because it was only Nikola that traveled there, if we follow the narrative. So suddenly he's got a nephew that happens to be in New York that can go and pick up these files. He would have needed 2 trucks to transport them. Where did he put them? Where are they now? Where's the nephew? I haven't been able to trace any of his descendants. So I find that very strange. And also, I mean, there's a lot more to the story than this, but also I find it unusual that someone who was what would be the forefront of technology, actually spearheading our technological development at that time, responsible for radio control, X-ray, neon lights, obviously wireless transmission, alternating current, everybody knows, and then working on harnessing energy from the ether. So this was a man that we would consider to be an intelligent version of Elon Musk. Obviously, we know with Musk that he actually employs people that know how to do the stuff. It's not him. And obviously, I think most people know he's government funded. But if we step back for a moment and think, okay, right now, who would you consider to be at the forefront of technology today? People would immediately say Elon Musk, as a kind of blanket term almost, because most people know it's not actually him, but he's the figurehead. So why is there no video footage of Nikola Tesla?
Right.
There is of Einstein, there is of Edison, there is of Westinghouse, the people that he worked with, but why none of him? So I contacted his museum, and they said they think he might have been camera shy. And I thought, well, that's strange, because he apparently was paid to attend dinner parties, paid to give lectures and talks, wrote for numerous magazines and publications, and he was camera shy, hanged around with Mark Twain, on and off worked with Donald Trump's uncle, but he was camera shy, bless him. And it, anyway, I, for 5 years, I've been trying to find anybody out there that's related to him. And finally, about a year ago, I was approached by someone, and they said they were his niece. And you can imagine, Nikola Tesla, if he existed, would be someone I consider to be a hero. And someone whose story I want to continue to expose, because we weren't taught about him at school, yet he was responsible for the lighting in the building and the electronics we were using. I mean, indirectly, alternating current enabled us to operate. So I started to probe, and in the end, this person broke, and said that they had been told by Donald Trump that they were no longer allowed to talk to me because I was asking questions that they weren't comfortable answering. And that's as far as it went. So whether or not this person was telling the truth, I don't know. Were they told to stop talking to me? I've no idea. Or were they just trying to, trick me, have a bit of fun with me, play a game with me? Again, I don't know, but that's the closest I ever got to being able to find out whether or not the photos we see of Nikola Tesla are him, or if it's Frank Zappa. So I never got any further than that. And I'm still looking today. I put it out there all the time, and people always hit back. I mean, I assume these are the ones that are up to date with their boosters. They'll hit back and say, of course he existed. We know he existed because my uncle's next door neighbour's friend, who used to wash the windows for a lady who lived down the bottom of a street, well, her next door neighbour's uncle's auntie's cousin's son met him. Okay, I can't really use that, I'm afraid. Do you have any photographs together? Any correspondence, a postcard, a letter? Oh, no, but he definitely existed. I'm not saying he didn't exist. I'm saying the person we've been told might not have ever existed. That this might be just someone they've pinned a lot of things onto. Um,
Onto.
yeah, and I get that quite a lot. You know, people will actually, come at me and say, "Of course he existed. There's evidence he existed." Well, yeah. I mean, there's evidence out there to suggest that what happened in 2020 was the result of someone eating a bat in a wet fish market. There's evidence
Exactly.
out there that, face masks work and we should all wear one. If there is an outbreak again, there's lots of evidence depending on where you want to look for it. I can't rely on Google and Wikipedia, unfortunately, because I
Yeah.
can't print things based, from a source that we know is really designed to push a narrative and mislead. So I kind of need more than that. So today I'm still hoping he existed. I really am hoping, but there's just so much that doesn't stack up for me.
Wow, that's so interesting, and I'm chuckling because I love the way you Brits have got such a wonderful sense of humor. Actually,
Dry.
you're totally dry. It's like those who are up to date with their
Oh,
boosters.
you'll like this. This is what I said the other day, and quite a few people. It was on an interview, and quite a few people commented. It made them chuckle. People over here, a lot of people, not everyone, of course, but there are a lot of people here that believe that our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, runs the country, that he decides what's going to happen, and they don't obviously understand that he's a puppet for think tanks and he's controlled. And I said, Keir Starmer, along with most world leaders, have the same amount of authority as a do not tumble dry label in your jumper.
It's so true.
People
It's
just found that
so
hysterical, and I thought I'm going to keep that one. Write it down before I forget it.
true. I'm copywriting that.
Yeah.
But listen, let's not let old Keir and Tony off the hook too soon, because
Oh,
definitely.
well, Tony's the problem, isn't he? Keir's nothing.
Well,
Insignificant.
I'm definitely gonna, and we're gonna be talking about Tony as well further down the line, because you certainly said some things in our last show that sort of piqued my interest. And also, if you think about going back in history, the British were the dirtiest of the lot. They were so nasty, and the whole Commonwealth. But anyway, so it would make sense that, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Still are.
Exactly, sitting there like being all like coy and proper, meanwhile back at the ranch, there's a whole lot of dodginess going on there behind the scenes. However,
Absolutely.
Tony Blair is not getting off the hook today. However, let's reverse to the white elephant or the ghost elephant in the room. Tesla, is it a white elephant or is it a ghost elephant? Because I love it, because part of your book as well, and I don't remember the names of the people offhand, but those who are given credit for these incredible inventions, buildings and all sorts of architectural designs, and really all that done, these people that came out of nowhere and had suddenly, within 5 years, had created more architecture. One was the whole city of Philadelphia, who designed the whole city of Philadelphia. Who was that again? I forget the name. You've mentioned it in your book. But it's hilarious, because now it seems that's the same with Tesla. This, if what you're saying is right, this Tesla, amazing Tesla toroidal technology that has changed the face of history, created by Nikola Tesla, this hero, and all his pedigrees we hear about, now could very well potentially not even have existed. So that would tell me that this is clearly Tartarian technology that they are still making use of in today's age. Also giving all sorts of fictitious characters credit for buildings they couldn't even draw on a A4 sheet of paper, never mind design in real life time, right? 3D time. Now the same with Tesla. So tell us, what is your thoughts on that?
It's funny because the buildings tend to be where it falls down. And it's not necessarily the main building. So if you pick anybody, like take, for example, going back to the early 1900s, I think 1908, the World's Fair, well, it was the Franco-British exhibition in London. Now, that was credited by the Earl of Derby, who was a high-ranking Freemason, who had no experience in building anything at all. And all of a sudden, he comes up with this concept to build this place called White City, a huge expanse of land covered in Greco-Roman buildings and statues that after the exhibition had finished, was left to fall into disrepair. The place that it's in, White City, in London, is still called White City today. That's the area of London. Even the tube train station is called White City. And you'll see white cities everywhere, and they're called white cities because they painted the old buildings white to make them look brand new. So after the exhibition, it falls apart, and then the Second World War finishes it off. They bomb it, and it just happens to be today where the BBC television centre is based, right on the land. And the area that the BBC sits on is called the Court of Honour. And right in the centre, it has an inner circle and an outer circle within the BBC building. And in the centre of it is a statue of Helios, and so which was worshipped by the Tartarians, the deity worshipped by the Tartarians, the sun god, where the energy was coming from. Why would the BBC leave that there? Why are they saying that the Earl of Derby built this World's Fair, designed it, came up with the concept, the architectural plans, everything? I mean, there's nothing, you can't find any of these plans anywhere. They credit it to a high-ranking Freemason, and then, as with all the other world expositions and World's Fairs, it's allowed to fall apart or it's destroyed within moments of it ending, and then the BBC plant their new headquarters right on the top of it, with a statue in the middle, worshipping a sun god. Now, so what you can do with some buildings, I mean, I did this with one called the Pneumatic Hospital in Bath. I started doing some digging on that one, and the architect credited with this particular Greco-Roman building, which is enormous and now derelict, of course. I looked into him, and he was 1 when it was built, 1 year old. He's the architect. So some of them they were a little bit clumsy with, but often, you know, if you looked into, say, Penn Station in New York, it might stack up that the architect grew up as a farmer, and then one day he started drawing, got a job as an apprentice in a draftsman's office, and a year after his apprenticeship, he lands the contract to build one of the largest train stations in the world, because obviously that happens every day, and then never builds anything else, anything like it ever again, and disappears. But sometimes the narrative actually looks realistic. It's believable. So you then have a look at the other buildings they're credited with, and you'll always find at least one where they weren't born when it was actually constructed. So they just clump them together. And I think this was done cleverly, but with haste.
Right.
You know, so they've sort of paused and thought about the main building you're going to focus on. But then the haste has gone and it's been replaced with speed, when there are several other buildings that they can't be bothered to create backstories for. So they clump them all together under this one person. Yeah, exactly. Thinking that 100 years later, who's going to bother checking?
Exactly. Not thinking that we would have the facilities and the means today, and the internet sleuths like yourself who are coming back to reclaim what is rightfully ours. Because honestly, without this, it makes such perfect sense, when we talk about how, the whole old world to the new, everything, the Cabbage Patch Kids, the orphan trains, the babies, the mothers that were put into these asylums. And this was truly the takeover of evil. So they literally destroyed. I just want to make sure I've got this correctly. They literally then created the mud flats with weather technology, etc., and destroyed old Tartaria. And we looked.
They nuked it.
Yes. Wow. And it's very interesting what you say. So many of the old buildings. And of course, I love the way that you write your sense of humor. It's like, why on earth would we imagine that windows would be built halfway down into the ground, right? And we only have half a window. Why was no one questioning this? Why was no one questioning this?
That they were told that it was to let light into what would have been the servants' quarters, but that isn't true, because the servants always lived on the top floor. And if anybody out there watching this has any background in building and construction, they'll know that to dig down, to build a floor below ground is a lot harder than it is to build up, because there are lots of problems. First of all, you've got to excavate quite some distance around the building to be able to get down there and actually build it. And secondly, they always have issues with damp. It's a problem. So, and with regard to the little piece of the window just letting in a little bit of light, I've been in lots of these buildings. It's a full-sized window. It's just 3/4 of it's covered by the pavement. You would have just put a small window in. You wouldn't put a full-sized window in knowing that half of it's, 3/4 of it are going to be covered. And often there's another floor, and often the floors underneath have mud in them. And I know somebody who lives in London that used to actually work for John Lewis's installing. I don't know if you know John Lewis, but it's a sort of an upmarket chain of stores where middle-class people go to buy their kitchen appliances and clothes and so on. It's quite expensive, but it's got a brand of a strapline, of never knowingly undersold. So it's kind of it's not Harrods and it's not a supermarket. It's somewhere in the middle, and they have quite a few of them. Now his job was to go and install the domestic appliances for John Lewis customers in a very affluent area of London. And he went into one of these buildings, and it had been passed down through the family from great grandparents to the current owner. They have this basement which has the mud flood windows, and the windows, actually half of it's visible. So they decided to use it as a kitchen. So it's a kitchen diner. I don't know why. There can't be that much light going into it. And he said that there is a floor below it. And they got into, there was a door that was boarded up. So they managed to get through the door, get down a few steps, and it was completely filled with mud. They started digging into the mud, and there's furniture in there. They found tables and chairs completely covered in mud. A lot of people live in these buildings and have no idea that they might have a basement, which was originally the ground floor, but now a basement. But there are levels below that, because it wasn't just a few feet of mud. They literally covered. Yeah. And where there were areas where, let's say, for example, burial sites, they had to cover those completely. So it needed to be a high level of soil, of mud. And so where you have large areas where this took place, they'll typically build a park there or a golf course, because it's unlikely they're going to be excavated. And across the world, you'll find that there are quite a few places called Hyde Park. but it's spelt in Old English Hyde instead of HIDE.
Yes,
Yeah, but
Johannesburg, there's a whole suburb called a shopping center in the upper echelon areas, the rich area of Johannesburg called Hyde Park. Yeah.
yeah, so they're hiding. Um, and so where there are valleys, where there were structures, settlements, architecture they couldn't really explain, they flooded them and they became lakes. But normally, if it's something big in the middle of a city or a town, then that becomes a Hyde Park. And if it's outside of a heavily populated area, it becomes a golf course, and that stops people excavating.
I'm absolutely mind blown by what you're saying
Mm,
because not only, I mean, if we think about them nuking an entire civilization, really,
mm.
right? An entire world, an entire existence. And how many dead bodies, I would imagine, must have been caught up in these mud floods that are probably also caught up underneath these buildings and stuff as well. So, spiritually, you can imagine this is not good. Anyone knows when some kind of event like that has occurred and you've left a burial site, as you say, and stuff like that, that is naturally going to cause all sorts of disturbances in a
Yeah,
spiritual realm. I don't know. What's your take on that? You see a
yes,
lot of these old Native American sites that are very, very um, unrestful, put it that way, because of
yeah.
stuff like this.
And there've been films about it. Perhaps one of the more famous would be Pet Cemetery. These old
Yes.
sites that we have no right to be messing around with. But I think with golf courses, it's easier because nobody lives there. People are passing through. They don't tend to be sat in one particular area for very long. So I think that's the perfect guise for an old burial site. But of course, you've got catacombs all over the world, everywhere. People always associate catacombs with Paris. The Paris one's funny if you start adding the numbers up. Um, 6 million
Yeah.
skulls in there, but
Oh, that's
if you look,
crazy.
but they've never had 6 million people living in the area. They hadn't up until that point had 6 million people there. Um, so
Wow.
these are basically a trophy cabinet for the people that fell during the Napoleonic Wars, which were the Tartarian civilization. Obviously, they consist of lots of different groups of people. It's just a blanket term. But to the old world, if you like, that Paris is a good example.
Mm.
Here in Edinburgh, there's one. There's catacombs everywhere. They even have them here near me. There's one in a city called Exeter. They are everywhere. Once you start looking, it's just Paris is more famous. Um, but of course, they only contain the skull and a few bones. They don't contain all of the bones. Most of the bones were crushed and used to make bone china. And the bodies themselves were used as fertilizer. So in Europe, a lot of the bodies were shipped back to Britain and used as fertilizer in our crops and produce. So and the teeth were removed as well, and they became used as recycled, if you like, and became dentures. In fact, at the time, Waterloo dentures were the most expensive false teeth you could buy. And the reason people were buying false teeth and needed them is because everyone was suffering from radiation poisoning. And that's why in the mid 1700s and onwards, wearing lead white paint and wigs and gloves, even indoors, became really popular because these parasites were suffering from radiation poisoning. And that, the people on the streets, the rest of us, the great unwashed, we were told we had syphilis or typhus or whatever, or cholera. There was a problem with contamination. And it's not like we've been told. This contamination doesn't last thousands of years. It doesn't last that long at all. I mean, look at Chernobyl and Hiroshima. People went back quite quickly after the events and are living there quite happily. They're within moments of Hiroshima. people went back and they were looking for people, looking for things. They rebuilt it. I mean, if we follow the narrative we've been told about what happens after a nuclear explosion, then the contamination is there, and people wandering around with their Geiger counters, and it's not safe to go back to for a very, very, very long time. But literally within moments of the Chernobyl incident, people were fishing in the lake and wandering around having a look. I think that the idea with that is to keep people away from prodding
Yes,
around certain areas.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I have said so often on shows and stuff like this that I think there's a lot of fear mongering out there, fear porn on what these guys are actually capable of doing. They tell us they can do this, that, the next thing. And really, literally, the average booster, the guy that's at his booster, is going to cower in fear.
Yeah.
And, yes, yes, no, we don't. So the average person that they've been able to instill with this fear, they can tell you anything and you're going to believe it. And we know now how powerful the mind is, right? So what you believe, you're actually going to start creating for yourself and manifesting. That's the power of the human mind, which is why, by the way, they like us so much, because we do manifest their fears for them. That's why they like us. And that's why they use us, is so that we can create on their behalf. Why do you think there are so many psyops and things? Because the fear through the psyops is exactly what they enjoy. They enjoy creating exactly what we don't want, because they know how energy works and they know how the human consciousness can create. It's so obvious to me when we see certain things as well. And also how they've inverted stuff, Guy. How they've really taken everything, inverted it, and used it for their own nefarious purposes, like we are seeing here. I'm interested to know from you, though, if there was no Tesla, let's take your narrative, which I'm quite willing to accept could be true, because I think we know. Oops, guy's gone. Oh dear. Okay, well, let's hope he comes back. So what I was just saying to Guy as well is that, if there is no Tesla, if what he's saying is true and there is no Nikola Tesla, and that character has been created by the cabal, where then does the toroidal technology, or the Tesla technology, where does it come from? So I would be very interested to hear Guy's take on that, and I truly hope that he is going to pop back in again, and that he's not gone for good. So hang in there with us, guys. Yeah. I'm not sure what you guys think about that. Let me know what you think in the comments so long, while I'm waiting for Guy to see if he's going to come back, and just see what you guys have to say about that. I mean, I love that Shamanu talking about the papers or his information that was in a safe in a hotel room that took 3 truckloads of exactly what type of trucks. That's why I said I think it must have been Dinky Toys. So not sure about that. But just give me a minute, Guy. Oh, here he is. Yay. We thought you disappeared on us, Guy. I'm very happy to see you back. Oh my gosh, Lima. Can you hear us, Guy? Can you hear, Guy? Okay, I don't think Guy can hear us. We're just going to give it a little bit more time. I'm just going to just give Guy some time to see if we can reconnect. I know, Lisa D. Oh no. Well, you're just gonna have to put up with me for a while, guys. Let's see if you can connect, reconnect. Super interesting show. I'm really in loving this information. That's for sure. I love these internet sleuths, these truth people that are really go to the nth degree to dig up the truth for us. And I tell you, Guy Anderson is certainly one of those. And I have to say, if you haven't got any of his books yet, or read any of his books, or listened on audio books yet, I am currently listening to Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Absolutely amazing information. Fascinating. So I really want to encourage you guys to actually maybe to get hold of some of his books, because guess what? He has agreed to do a book club with us on members. So we're going to be doing a book club on members with Guy one of these days, if we can get him to tune back in, because I think that we seem to be having, here he is again. Happy. Let's see. I'm just going to check until I see his face on the screen. Where are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm still here. I got kicked off. My internet has disconnected. Yeah,
I'm so happy you made your way back.
to now do this. Sorry about that. I've actually lost the internet. Wonder if there is a gale. I mean, it is, the weather here is horrific. There is a gale outside. It's blowing, at some speed.
It's so funny because we've been both Jesse and another interview I'm supposed to be having next week with Americans have both warned me that America has got big weather warnings on the horizon as well. You guys are having a whole lot of weather stuff going on there. So you all hold on to your knickers. We ain't blowing away anywhere. We understand.
It's flooded. Here is flooded.
Wow. So you guys have got the floods. Speaking about the mud floods.
The fields here are absolutely flooded. I mean, you couldn't. There's no way that any farm would be able to actually manage their land at the moment around here. It's just, a lot of them look like lakes. I went for a walk this morning with our dog and had to turn back because the road where I live that's flooded. It's bad, and I can hear the wind outside now.
That's very interesting, because we were just talking about this weather technology, and we know that the weather witches exist. We know that DARPA and HARP and these guys are having a wonderful time really just screwing with the weather and the climate, and starting fires and mud floods and tornadoes and earthquakes. It makes such sense what you were saying, that's how they've created the fall of the old world, really, is through weather conditions as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It makes such sense. Guys, I was just telling the viewers, guys, that you've agreed. So I've got you hooked, Guy, for our book club. And we just have to decide when it's going to be and what have you, because I think we're going to have so many awesome conversations. I'm definitely looking forward to that. But let's go back to what I was trying to, before I diverted myself 7,000 times. If we don't believe that Tesla exists, right, that he's some phantom fictitious character but dreamt up by the cabal, what is your take on where that technology comes from? His information that took 3 truckloads to drive away.
Yeah, so I think with regard to Frank Zappa, sorry, I meant Nikola Tesla. I think the information was being reverse engineered. But it's how that was happening. So let's say he existed, and and I do want to stress that I want him existed. I really do. It's just the more I dig, the more lies you find about just about everything, and then it taints your views on even things you want to believe. They're tainted. It's
Sure.
reverse engineering, because if you look at what his life's ambition was, if we follow the narrative, he tricked JP Morgan into backing him to transmit wireless information, which become news broadcasted around the world, because he sold it to Morgan as, if you back me and I can transmit news broadcasts everywhere, then you essentially have control of what is news and what's broadcasted. Of course, JP Morgan wanted that because he could control the markets, by broadcasting whatever he wanted to everywhere. He was very interested in that, but what he didn't realize was that Tesla was spending the majority of the time trying to harness energy from the ether, and that was what Warden Cliff Tower was. So where did he get that idea from? Where did he find the information from that would go on to become his life's ambition? How do you wake up one morning and think, I decided, despite the ether being removed from the periodic table, it's gone, it's no longer an element, that element has been removed and it's considered to be pseudoscientific, yet he decides that he's going to try and harness energy from the atmosphere. He's then going to set up towers that transmit this energy to everywhere in the world, so people don't have to pay for electricity. It's free. Where did that come from? How do you wake up one morning and decide to work on something that would change life as we know it without having seen it somewhere before? And that's why there's so many inventions that have come along, like the internet, for example, that have changed our world. And I don't think that someone wakes up one morning and decides they're going to pursue something that doesn't exist and make it exist. So I think he says he was receiving the information from the Venusians. I think if he existed, that he was receiving the information from somewhere, but I think it was reverse engineering. And history has showed us that whenever we reverse engineer something, it's clunky. This is true of artificial limbs that became popular after the Napoleonic Wars. All of a sudden, these clunky designs appear. So I think that when we reverse engineer products, we don't fully understand the intricacy of them, and we perhaps miss vital clues, and end up with a sort of bastardized, cobbled together version of the original. So if he existed, where was he getting the information from? You see my electricity's flickering now. The electricity here, the lights just flickered, so it's pretty bad out there. So the information itself was either he had been given this, or given blueprints to something, or at least some technical information on what's possible, or he had decided that the pyramids, as we now know, were harnessing energy from the ether, and the Tartarians were, and he got this from somewhere and decided he was going to have a go doing it too. And that's why what I find difficult to accept as well, that he never says that the information comes from anywhere other than visions, where he's communicating with the Venusians. Okay, but I need a little bit more than that. So I think if let's say, for example, he's a fictitious character, then all of a sudden things make a lot more sense. That the parasites that took over, that replaced the previous civilization, know that one of the reasons they wanted to get rid of them was they were harnessing energy from the ether.
Yes.
And also that they had these other devices. They had lots of other technology, and they wanted to label it against the name So it's all put towards one person, then they don't have to explain where they found it. They make this person have some sort of kind of almost sort of fantasy novel life with no descendants, so he disappears. I think that they found old technology. They'd got rid of the people that
Yes.
knew how to use it, and
Yeah,
now we're trying to
exactly.
find ways to profit from it and weaponize it. And that's what the World's Fairs were about, to launch these products into the
Exactly.
consumer market.
And it's very interesting what you're saying as well. When suddenly there'd be these big fires of the destruction of these beautiful buildings, and then straight after that, boom, other crappy buildings or whatever would be built on top of that. So they're already like claiming, and I would imagine that a lot of those buildings were and are on some very sacred ley lines or portals, stuff like that. So they've known exactly how to harness that energy and use it, and then, as you say, reverse engineer technology that they were not sure of how to use it. And that would then make a lot of sense if you think about Operation Paperclip after the Second World War, because that to me is something, again, I'd like to hear your take on that. You know, the Germans, or call it the Nazis. We know that the Nazis were not German, right? That was Hitler was the fall guy for that. But let's talk about that. What I understood to be Vril technology that the Germans were using. So now when we're looking at the whole Tartaria experience, free energy, and of course had many masterful humans must have been working at the time, existing at the time, that were pretty smart and, yeah, lived a good, amazing, clean existence. Things were much bigger, trees were much bigger, so a lot of suppression has occurred since then. I think everything has compressed a lot. But what is your take on Vril energy or the German energy, right? And I know we have spoken about this before because we spoke about Hitler and friends going to the Himalayas and finding the masters of Vril, but it's not really the Vril. In my opinion, that's the Vritya, which is the light, pure side of whatever the dark technology is. What is your take on all of that?
I think the Himalayas are important because there were two reasons to be in that area. One is that they believe that is the entrance to the hidden world, that they think that is where you access Shambhala from.
Right.
Also, some people believe that there is a possibility that the Ark of the Covenant is there. So you've got those to consider. But with regard to who they were looking for the Aryans. Now the
Yes.
Aryans, they're Scythians. They are Tartarians. They're priests, and
Yes.
that's what it means,
Yes.
lordly. So these were
Yes.
priests that had knowledge of sacred geometry, cymatics, frequency, how to build using vibration. And that's what they were looking for. That was the Aryan race. The Aryan people are the
Is
Scythian priests.
is that why they were measuring it? They were said to be measuring the skulls of the
Yeah.
Tibetan kids because it had something to do with the size of the skulls. And of course, now it makes sense because these would have then be the reincarnation, right, of these priests that they were looking for back then. Would it be the reincarnation that they were looking for?
I don't know about reincarnation, but certainly the bloodline, because
Right.
memories, our DNA stores memory. And so when
Hmm.
you're born, you have within your DNA, the memory of your parents up until the point that you were conceived. That's in your DNA. And in their
Right.
DNA is the memory of their parents up until the point that they were
Right.
conceived. So they were trying to harness this information. They wanted to capture
Hmm.
it. And they were using the occult. They believed that the occult, occulted kind of practices and esoteric knowledge existed that would enable them to actually, if you like, withdraw this information from Aryans. So they weren't looking to create an Aryan race. They were looking for the Aryans because they wanted to extract the information from them on how to build. How do you build a pyramid? How do you get those
Oh
huge blocks?
my
Yeah,
gosh.
frequency. You can lift anything using frequency. The right
Of
frequency will
course.
move a mountain.
Anything, yes. I
Mm.
mean, all you got to do is, I mean, how many kids in the system have I spoken to? What is it called when they can lift things with their minds? Is a
Yeah.
certain, yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Now that makes sense, Guy. Perfect sense that they, in fact, were looking for the people that
Yeah.
could access that or that energy or that information for their nefarious. What were they doing with those Himalayan monks and things? I don't even want to think about that, because it is well known that the Nazis were there with the Himalayan monks and stuff. What was going on there? Why
We
are you
don't
smiling
know.
like
I
that?
didn't know I was. It's
Maybe I'm
knowledge.
looking too deep into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's knowledge. And if we look at people, and I've forgotten her surname, like Maria, from the Thule Society, that were communicating with spirits and other beings from outside of our realm. It was knowledge. They constantly wanted knowledge, and Himmler actually amassed more occulted books than that contain sacred geometry than anybody else in the world. And that was what they were trying to do. They wanted this information so they could capture it and you weaponize it, profiteer from it. But at the same time, obviously, the Second World War was really about destroying what was left of the Tartarian infrastructure, and then coming back with, being able to harness energy from the ether, but telling you that you're going to pay for it because we're using fossil fuels to generate the electricity you're consuming, where they get it for free and we pay for something that has no cost. So that's
I mean,
what they've been trying to do. Yeah. And that's the purpose of a pylon.
wow.
It's a small Tesla tower. And if you follow the pylons, the electricity pylons, they normally just finish, or return back to actually the power station. But they're not actually sending any. They're not sending energy from the power station. They're harnessing energy from the ether and then sending it to your home, and you're paying for it, and there's no cost to them other than actually the infrastructure itself. Maintaining the infrastructure. The coal-fire power is just theatre.
Wow. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. Guy, who's still there?
Yeah.
Guy seems to have frozen. Oh, there you still are. Okay, no, you seem to have frozen on screen. I was wondering if your tornado had taken you away from us again, but I'm very happy that it hasn't. Wow, I mean, that is absolutely fascinating. But I want to go back to the Himalayas and the monks there. Why were they giving those guys this information? Or was it being tortured or taken or siphoned? You see, for me, that would be a key again, is because we understand, obviously, like with the Himalayan monks and masters, they really are bringing in bliss. They channel energy. That's what they do. They really bring in, we move into that space of blissfulness to align with the Holy Spirit, right? And then bring yourself into that place of bliss, which is what the Himalayan masters are about. Why were the Germans there? How did they get that information out of them? What did they do? Was that where some
I wouldn't
kind
have
of
thought they got any information. I wouldn't have thought for one moment they got any information out of them. Yeah, I don't think that they would, because think that actually, so no matter whether they were tortured or beaten, I don't think that they would have still handed over anything, because they were able to put themselves in a position where they wouldn't have necessarily felt what was happening. And I think that they this is just a guess, because we don't know. My assumption would be that they would rather die than hand over information like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Yeah.
threatening them would have made any difference. And certainly torturing them, they lived in a far higher frequency, and still do today, than we are able to. They could, which can completely remove pain. You can remove pain. You can switch that off. So I don't think that would have done anything. And I think no matter what they were threatened with, they wouldn't have divulged anything. So that's just my thoughts on it. But bottom line is, we don't know, do we?
Exactly. No, that's why I asked, because for me that's a bit of a question mark. Is that I know they went there. It's well documented they went there. Was it a truth or was it a lie? Well, it kind of makes sense to me that they would have, right? Because of what they were seeking, and especially with the area, and they were measuring the kids there, the skulls of kids. So that would make sense to me. But again, yeah, it's there's just a comment. Giants were in the Himalayas, from Estelle. Giants were in the Himalaya mountains. The Nazis were tracking the giants. That would also make sense. It's possible, that the giants existed there.
They were certainly trying to get rid of the giants, and you can see that in the Second World War. They actually had giants fighting on the German side. And so if people have a look at images of giants or tall, very, very tall people during the Second World War, I've got photographs of them serving German soldiers that are, well over 7 feet tall. So the giants were everywhere, and I think the Second World War was an opportunity to round up a few more, because they affect the narrative, don't they? That we were created in God's image, and we're all kind of the same, and we've evolved to meet our environment, and that's why we ultimately might look a little bit different. And of course, that's all nonsense. We're one of numerous civilizations to live on this realm.
Yes.
And they don't want us to know that, because immediately that throws out Darwin's theory of evolution. That's one theory
right.
gone. The other, that we were created in the image of God in the Old Testament, that's thrown away as well, because it will clearly show that there have been lots of different civilizations living here. I mean, and after all, Adam and Eve were told to go out there and repopulate, not populate, repopulate. It's all there. And I think the giants are still here. I mean, someone I know was actually in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, when they airlifted a giant. And Hillary Clinton, there was a leaked memo from her talking about this. He was there. He was security, military security for the area. He watched it being airlifted.
Well, listen, I mean, my lineage, my grandfather, they were all 6'8", 7'7". I mean, my father was 6'6". His father was like 6'8", and uncle 7'2". I tell you, no, we come from, and I mean, I'm not a giant. I'm 5'9". I wouldn't consider myself a giant, but I'm strong, tall, athletic, and yeah, definitely strong.
Yeah,
so it's
a bit
very
of
interesting.
descending from Gilgamesh, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Does it make any difference?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. All the strawberry blonde hair, most definitely. You must see my brother's little grandkids. They are the most cutest, beautiful two little kids with this bright red hair. It is the cutest. And I've got the strawberry blonde. My son has it as well. Definitely my dad. From that, definitely the bloodline for sure. It would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, the giants are always said to be red-haired. I mean, historically, I'm not talking about more modern times, but historically, if we go back through ancient texts and stories shared by indigenous tribes across the world, they always say that they were red-haired.
Yes, you hear a lot about that. You hear a
Yeah,
lot about
Gilgamesh
that.
had red hair. Gilgamesh, who was, yeah, one of many descendants of the Anunnaki. They're all red-headed.
Right. And are they specifically with the Rh negative bloodline? Do you know anything about that whole bloodline and the giants and what that's about? So it's got nothing to do with Rh negative blood.
No, no. I mean, Rh negative is considered to be Atlantean. That's the bloodline from
Yes.
Atlantis. But
Right.
Rh null is the blood group that they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's the interesting one. But from some research I did into blood groups, which I actually wrote a chapter on in my second book, which is called Rise of the Clones. The reason that there was this sudden interest to send your DNA in to places like Ancestry.com was because that's what they're looking for. And that was the reason for swabbing during the pandemic. They are looking for bloodlines. Now, I don't know whether or not that is because they want to approach these people, because within their DNA, they will have information that goes back right to the very beginning. Or is it because they want to remove certain bloodlines? Because that ties in with the company that owns Ancestry.com, which is Blackstone, who, obviously associated closely with BlackRock. So if they have, if Blackstone bought the world's largest database of DNA and are one of the largest investors in the world in bioweapons, that makes sense to me, that they are actually going to target specific blood groups and races of people.
Wow.
And that's relatively easy to do. They can just make sure that any vaccine you're given is different to perhaps the person next door, or your water supply, or whatever. Lots of ways of actually getting to you. So I think it's that. But they've certainly been looking for Rh null, which some people believe is a true bloodline of the Anunnaki. There are currently 43 people in the world that they have registered with Rh null. It's called golden blood. Now, blood we know that inside us we contain a very small amount of gold, but people with Rh null contain a higher level, a higher volume of it. So yeah, and I know one person, he's a musician who has Rh null, and he was a remote viewer for NSA and NASA, because when he had a blood test done, he was working with the NSA. He had a blood test done when he joined, full medical. They took him to one side and said, "You're Rh null, you're going to remote view." And immediately they had him communicating with what they believed to be the Anunnaki.
How interesting. According to Penny Bradley, who's one of the guests on my channel, and she's a SSP survivor, spent many years on Mars and places like that. She reckons the Anunnaki actually control this country, this planet, but they're the ones that still believe in that humans can be eaten. The Draconians have come to the realization that humans should not be eaten anymore, but it's the Anunnaki who are still the ones consuming human flesh and blood and
yeah, I'm not sure I believe that. I'm not sure if I believe that, simply because if you sort of, the further you look into it, one of the things that they found most abhorrent about us as a primitive species when they arrived was the fact that we ate the flesh of other mammals. So I'm not sure, but today, I mean, who knows? Because the descendants of the Anunnaki are running the world still. I mean, the Rothschilds would be one, a prime example. I mean, Jacob Rothschild himself had an elongated skull. They're still running everything. So yes,
totally.
I think that the descendants of Enki, Enlil, Anu, whoever are still here. They are here now running the show. But whether or not they eat human flesh, I don't know. But I think that they do obviously have an interest in consuming blood that contains adrenochrome. because I
Right,
think
of
that they're
course.
constantly, it's immortality that they're trying to reach, trying to achieve.
Right.
And I think that that is because they know that they haven't followed the rules. They're going to have to meet their maker, and there's karmic retribution coming for them. And I think they're trying to fight that as often as, as much as they possibly can.
I so agree with that. When you're looking at this whole vampirism thing, because it's through that vampirism and recycling themselves 100,000 times that they actually get away with it. But it's absolutely true. It cannot carry on forever. Truth will always prevail, and I think we really are at the time now where the truth is surfacing for sure again. Wow. Guy, as always, this is fascinating, amazing, wonderful. And I look forward to having you back again. We will arrange off air when that will be. And the good news to all our viewers is that Guy has agreed to do a book club with us. So join the membership or the Patreon, and you will get to be, then you'll be able to join us live. We will probably do it on Patreon, so that we actually all sign into Zoom and you can ask a live question with Guy. So I think that's amazing. Get his books on Amazon or Audible, and then, research what he's been doing, and we can all have some conversations about this in a couple of weeks from now. Fabulous, Guy. Thank you. And I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to end off with, or if there's anything else you'd like to share with us before signing off.
There is actually. I'm glad you said that, because there's one thing. If John G. Trump kept the 3 files on time travel, where are they now? And while you're thinking about that, until next time, consider something. A lawyer named Ingersoll Lockwood, over 100 years ago, wrote a series of books. One of them was The Adventures of Baron Trump.
Yes.
Obviously, people will associate that with Donald Trump's youngest son. Baron Trump's advisor was Don. They lived in Castle Trump, and they were looking for a Garther. He also wrote a book called The Last President, about a hotshot American business tycoon in New York who, against all odds, becomes the president. The last president, because he changes the rules. He is the last president. His daughter will replace him. So, where are the time travel documents now? Are they with Donald? Is that why Donald has such an incredible association and relationship with Elon Musk? Are they working on time travel? And were those books that predicted Baron Trump and Donald Trump becoming the president over 100 years ago, were they written over 100 years ago? Or were they written more recently so people believed it was destiny?
Well, my thought on that. It's some kind of convoluted nonsense, because honestly, you're seeing it all over. It's convoluted, it's organized, and we see it over and over again. These guys aren't very creative. Now that we see their modus operandi, we just got to go look at different areas, right? And you're going to see the same thing happening in different areas. So boring, actually. So freaking boring. And we know the symbolism they use. Guys, we know what these geezers are up to. So, stay discerning. That's for sure. Guy, thank you so much. Really appreciate your information. Absolutely fascinating. Fascinating indeed. Look forward to, and if you, where can people find you?
Better connection. My website.
I would have to actually heard you quite well.
Which is under my name.
So, Guy Anderson.
No, the Tartarian.co.uk.
There we go. That's your website.
And there it is.
Where can the viewers get hold of you this week? Any shows you're doing?
I don't
Any
know.
any
I'm doing. I've got two more today, but I don't know when they come out because then they're very rarely live. So I'm not
right.
sure. But if they type my name in on YouTube, I'd imagine they'll find me easily enough. I'm on sort
Yeah.
of 2 or 3 a week. I did. Yeah, I've done a couple this week. I've got 2 more to do today. So yeah, they'll find me.
Nice. Well, I'm happy we found you today.
So am
Take care,
I.
guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate you. Have a beautiful weekend. I will see you back in 2 hours, 5:30, I think, on Dropping with Shanti. We're actually doing the sequel to Fall of the Cabal, how it began. The Janet, that Dutch lady, her stuff. We're just checking it out, commenting on that. So join me for that, everybody. Bring your chai, bring your tea, put your feet up. It's Friday. Let's party. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye.